This is Music Moneyball, the podcast that explores how to unlock the hidden value in music catalogues. Brought to you by Standard Innovation, the data consultancy for investment funds. Hello and welcome back to the Music Moneyball podcast. I'm Emma Griffiths and I'm joined by my co-host Tom Mullen. And today we have not one, but two members of the leadership team at Pophouse Entertainment joining us on the podcast. We have Per Sundin, President of Music and Artist Relations, and Natalia Fontecha, Partner and Head of Capital Raising and Investor Relations. Per and Natalia, welcome to the podcast. We are very excited to have you both here.
Thank you for having us.
We are.
Thank you. We're very excited too.
Yeah, amazing. And I think what really makes this interesting, in particularly the combination of you guys joining, is this balance of the creative and the capital side, and how those two perspectives come together to shape what you're building. So let's jump in. And Per, if we could start with you, what you're doing at Pophouse is quite unique, and you are approaching this quite differently from other funds in the space. So it would be great for you to just give us a quick overview of the Pophouse vision.
Yeah, I mean, Pophouse started 2013 or 14, and it's actually started with the ABBA Museum, which is located in the middle of Stockholm and have 450,000 visitors per year. And then it grew from there, and we also invested and started something called Mamma Mia the Party, which is it's been running in the O2 Arena, not in the big O2 Arena, but in a old nightclub in the O2 Arena, and then we have running it for 7 years, and then we also have running it in Stockholm for 10 years, and now we on a journey to roll that out in the world, because it's a fantastic experience if you haven't been there. We also done an Avicii experience, which is a museum, and we also has done ABBA Voyage in London, who has been selling over 4 million tickets and over 4 years. It's a anniversary, 27th of May. And so that's one side of Pophouse. That's one bucket, and where everything started. And then we started to think about, this is what we do when we can use ABBA as a blueprint, and see how the attention of a band that stopped doing music 1981, how they come across. And we said, why don't we? Well, first it was the owner of the company said, why don't we buy ABBA's assets? Well, they're never going to sell. And I worked with ABBA since '98, so he said that, well, okay, how can we buy Universal's rights? They never sell. That's jewel of the crown for ABBA. And then he said, well, okay, if we can we buy us other assets? With what money? I said, let's start a fund. And that's what because it was Connie Johnson who said that, and he is the chairman and mastermind of and founder of EQT, one of the world's biggest private equity fund company in the world. And so we started that, and thanks to having the creative people in Pophouse that the music industry, we paired it up with persons from Morgan Stanley, from McKinsey, and Jessica, and with the experience from private equity business, and that's really made us, and we think we're unique positions, and we think that we actually are in pole position, combining the creative people that know the music industry, like myself, and Natalia has huge experience from raising money, but also doing private equity to make the value add projects to really increase the value of the assets we buy.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, it seems like that blend of perspectives is really what drives Pophouse, which is great. And Natalia, from your perspective, how does that translate then into your investment strategy and thesis?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I want to mention Per referred to Jessica, who's our new CEO, who joined us in January. For those who are not familiar with Pophouse, and when it relates to our investment strategy, I think it's very unique in that it's very artist-centric, and storytelling is at the core of our model. Per was talking about Connie Johnson, who's one of our founders. The other founder is Björn Ulvaeus, one of the members of ABBA. So for Pophouse, it's both about creating financial and cultural value for our catalogs, and we look after legacies, the legacies of our artists, and really what we want is to connect generations through emotion and creativity, and the way we do this is by harnessing the power of storytelling. So we use storytelling to add value to the catalogs of artists that we buy. And that's really our investment strategy, is a private equity value add artist centric strategy.
Boy, I would have absolutely loved to be a fly on the wall for some of those early conversations.
Definitely.
But I suspect we don't have time to go into those right now. Natalia, so you've obviously had a long career in private markets. Can you just give us a kind of quick comparison about the experience you've had historically and the one that you see now in underwriting music IP, and how that differs?
Well, I mean, I will start saying that now I'm most of the time smiling. It's one of
That's
the
good.
things that
That's
it's
good.
very different from working in a traditional private equity environment to working in music investing. You know, when I go into meetings and we sit across the table with investors, everyone is smiling, everybody is joyful, and everybody has something they want to say about their favorite artist or ideas for the pipeline. So that and you know, I'm a quite joyful person. I'm Spanish originally, but this investing in music really brings up a lot of joy and good energy into the day-to-day life, more than any other traditional job I've had in my long career. But when it comes to investing and underwriting, I have to say, underwriting music IP is just as rigorous as underwriting a company. You know, we apply the same institutional discipline you will expect in private equity, because we are private equity. And what this means is data-driven screening, investment committee approvals, and full legal and financial due diligence, including ESG diligence as well. People sometimes are surprised that we underwrite cash flows bottom up, song by song. We do stress test scenarios, and we focus a lot on downside protection. So, you know, as much as we talk about storytelling and emotional connection and creativity, when we're analyzing the catalogs we're going to be investing in, we also look at music as something that is not niche or creative. It's just analyzed with the same financial rigor as we will do with any other financial asset. So I would say underwriting, it's pretty the same. I think what's a little bit different is what happens after the acquisition.
Yeah, and that's such a really nice marriage, isn't it? Where you get to bring the art, where you get to bring the storytelling, but equally, there is financial rigor, and you have to get those things done, because if you can't make it work, in the accounts, then the rest just isn't going to happen anyway. So there, when you've got an absolutely incredible set of assets that you now represent and manage, and when you're looking at artists, what helps you define as to whether they fit the Pophouse model, and how selective do you really have to be?
That's a good question. I think that since we have just to go through we bought Swedish House Mafia, then that was the first portfolio or a catalog we bought, and then we bought Avicii, which is I actually, when I was at university, signed myself 2010 and worked with him until he unfortunately passed away. And then we bought Cyndi Lauper, and then we bought Kiss, and that's really the first four. The first four was the first stint, if you say so, and then it took 1.5 years until we really went all in on Tina Turner, which we just announced that we bought the rights for. And as you can hear, they're quite different. I mean, it's two EDM artists. It's Cyndi Lauper from the 80s, if I say so, when she had her big hits, and then it's Kiss.
like kind of brand pioneers, right? Like their branding and merchandise has been, kind of iconic.
Yeah, and when we went in to talk to Doc McGee, the legendary manager of Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, and Kiss for the last 25 years, we start talking about we buy everything. We bought with Kiss we bought the brand, the makeup, the song, everything that Gene and Paul wrote, and what they performed. I mean, the logotype, everything. And if you look into we have the value of the masters, you have the value of the copyright, meaning the songwriters, and we also have something called nil rights, which is name, image, and likeness, combined with the brand. And having a brand that you can put on, I can even say they actually have coffins or caskets, so you can bury yourself or ask that in your will to be buried in a Kiss casket. They sold 14,000 caskets,
14,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and they
The Kiss Army, I can believe it.
and they
Yeah, the whole name, image, likeness, that's got to be the most fun set of rights, hasn't it? Just like gives you so much scope.
I mean, if you have a brand where you can sell air guitar strings, then I think you made it, and
That is
Air
it.
guitar strings.
yeah, the air guitar
The air guitar
strings. So
strings. I like that. So good.
I think the key thing is that when we look at something, we really want to see if we can make something of it. Meaning that, of course, we do financial due diligence, but we also do a brand and narrative due diligence. Meaning that we look into what can we develop from this? What can we do that is different, that actually gonna expose the music, the brand, the artist to new generations and to new geographies. I mean, I'm using the example of ABBA, who did their last album 81, and then they could make money of selling records, which was vinyl at that time, in North America, Western Europe, New Zealand, Australia, and Japan. That was the market. I mean, of course, they released music in South America, but it was so small compared to everything else. Now the whole world is in play, thanks to streaming services. And what we do, we look at this. This going to sound maybe boring, but when you look at the valuation of things, you see what things happening, and it's not like you're having a company or then having a fantastic product. This is more like real estate business. We have an evergreen value of these catalogs. They still streaming like they did when they first was released today. And that's the very interesting. You don't look at the P&L, you look at the balance sheet. That's what real estate companies working on. And that's really what we do too. We look, what's the valuation? How do we grow the value like a private equity company? And when they look at their assets, that's the same procedure as we're doing right now. And when you're looking at, when you're looking at artists, they need to have a certain value because the transaction cost in percentage needs to be, because we need lawyers on both sides. And, we fortunately need lawyers so we do the right things. And I think but it could be that, do we have a plan for something that is really a hidden gem? And I underline hidden. And then it could be a thing that we can make a bet on. I would say that no one maybe remembers the Search for Sugar Man, but that's a fantastic documentary about a forgotten guy that was just discovered, and he won an Oscar for Best Documentary. And that is a fantastic story. Or the documentary of Eva Cassidy. That's not a huge... not many people of the younger generations know who she was, but she was a fantastic woman with a fantastic voice. And those documentaries about those artists just made them break through and become number one around the world. And I think that's, if you're clever, you can also compare, the biggest things that ever has done in the kind of, I don't think they thought they were smart. I just think that they tried a thing called Drive to Survive. That's not music, that's Formula One. But that TV series has the biggest impacts of any, I would say, brand or product that's for the last 50 years, and taking this Formula One from a niche sport into sports growing, especially for young women, which is a fantastic way of increasing the value of the brand, which that Liberty did when they bought from Bernie Ecclestone.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comparison, actually, and not one that we've kind of brought up before, but I can totally see that a relatively institutional asset in itself, and by institutional in the public mind, less in the capital sense of the word, and then reinvigorated, introduced to new demographics, introduced to new regions, and seeing growth as a result. So I can definitely see that comparison. And Natalia, comparably, you guys are doing a relatively small number of deals. How do you think about balancing risk across the portfolio?
Yeah, we are highly selective by design. We have a fairly concentrated portfolio, and we go after what we call premier IP, and our recent partnership with Tina Turner is a good example of how we can source and execute on catalogs that are culturally significant and global, as Per was mentioning. The way we manage portfolio risk is again very traditional private equity like. We have some hard concentration limits. No single catalog can be more than 20% of the whole portfolio, alongside the rigorous due diligence that I was referring to before. And then, other than the portfolio construction, you can think of at an asset level the fundamentals of music, and the music that we focus on, which is catalog music, which we define as music that has been around for at least 5 years, where the decay curves are already very stable, and actually the catalogs are growing with the market or higher than the market. That in and of itself, it's already very resilient. And we look at catalogs that have streaming revenues that are global, and that have been persisting across different economic cycles in ways that are completely uncorrelated. So we look at those characteristics for our strong downside protection. And then, within that, we obviously diversify thoughtfully across genres, eras, geographies. And
I suppose even just in the difference of rights types as well, like the opportunities that brings you for revenue streams is really quite diversified, isn't it? I mean, you're getting away from just the consumption of the music, but actually to the consumption of all of these other types of goods that ultimately bring revenue.
Yeah, and actually, thank you for bringing that up, Tom, because that's one of the things that makes Pophouse and our approach very, very different. We focus on specifically master rights, because those are the ones that allow us to have active ownership of the catalog and do all of these creative, emotional initiatives with. We also can buy the publishing rights for sure, and as Per mentioned, we acquire name and likeness and everything that it's actually possible to acquire if it's available, because that all helps increase the amount of incredible new things that we can do and give an even more robust base to the acquisition.
Yeah, amazing. And I know that, we talked before about so much of the foundations of Pophouse being associated with ABBA and, what they've done. And that's really kind of built the blueprint, essentially, for what Pophouse is doing. And, you guys are a founding investor in ABBA Voyage and, heavily involved in that. But how much do you think that playbook kind of dictates what you're doing with the rest of the portfolio artists, and Per, kind of how do you kind of think about scaling that across other artists, and how much of it is repeatable versus unique to ABBA, who are such a unique band in themselves?
I think we have not been part of the creative setup or the production of the Avatar show. I was in a position, I was at CEO for president for Universal Nordics. So I was responsible for the catalog and signed the first contract we did. And we thought that this was very interesting. But in the first case was more like a hologram show, but we realized very quickly that that's not what it is. And then the two producers, Svana Gisla and Ludwig Andersson, they contacted ILM in Industrial Light and Magic, and then they find the guy Bailey Walsh, who was the creative director, and then they started to work together with Ben Morris, is the lead producer or CEO of ILM in UK, and me and some other people were raising money because we needed a lot of money for this project, and then. But we didn't really know how it's going to be, and so there was an idea, and you can imagine investing a lot of money in something. It's also for saying that we in a venue that is 45 minutes east of Leicester Square, it's also a big gamble. I say, and in the middle of the pandemic, it's also. We had also say, can we make this in time because we actually the venue where the ABBA Voyage is right now is only a temporary building, and we have to take it down eventually. But it's still doing so well. So the economy of London still wanted to be there, which is great for us. But when I was there, 4 weeks before the premiere, they asked me, "Hey, now you can come in and see how it looks like," which is, and I had no part of the creation of this, as Natalia said. Björn, of course, was Ulvaeus, one of the owners of Pophouse, was really checking how he looked, etc., which is important to for everyone that's becoming an avatar. And I went into the venue 2:00 on a Thursday afternoon. I remember exactly when it was, and they just put down the lights. And they played Visitors and Lay Your Love on Me, and I started to cry. I get almost emotional now because I realized
he realized that it was going to work.
And I realized it's going to work, and all the people we sold in the idea, they invested money in this. I felt that this really going to be. I didn't know it was going to be a success, but this is going to be amazing. And.
It's such a brave format.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many ways that could not have gone well, but so cool.
Yeah, and you are
right, and it's easy to assume it's ABBA, iconic, but you didn't know, like it was a risk, right?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And then of course you look at ABBA and you're just thinking of ABBA's unbelievable music. I mean, and ABBA's capital is not Stockholm, it's London. It's the heart and the emotions that ABBA gets from the people in UK is amazing. Even though you gave it 0 points in the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest final, but if you put that aside, ABBA is unique, and not only in UK, but UK is just amazing. But in rest of Europe, in the Latin world, in Japan, in Australia, ABBA has fantastic songs, fantastic vocals of the two girls, and I think it's totally unique. That said, of course, you can do it with other artists, but you have to have a different kind of approach, we believe. And as we've done, and what we've done with. When learned about it, we learned, you need to have the right people, the persons that's creating this, hopefully together with the artists, since if they're alive, to really create something to a concert performance, or just an experience, or to make it for people that never saw this band live before, or never can experience this kind of band before. So what we're doing with Kiss, for example, it's going to be more of a roller coaster. And we believe it's going to be something that is going to blow your mind, and it's going to be epic blood spitting and fire and bombs and everything you want. And then
it's going to be a joyride.
It's going to be,
I can
a scary ride. Yeah, I'm a little bit scared.
Joyride, yeah.
So
amazing.
Yeah, so that's really, so it's the key thing here is that you have to select. You can't do this with every brand and every artist. You need to select it. We though believe they can do what we've done is going to be a role model for everyone that follows, and you're going to be able to do it with lower budgets in different kind of places. The technology evolves, and so will the experience for the consumers.
I suppose as well, it kind of sets a level of courage, doesn't it? You know, to go and do that first one is incredibly brave, incredibly ambitious. And obviously, you know, you don't want to get complacent about previous success, but also momentum and confidence and courage, they do really matter, particularly in creative industries where actually people need that kind of freedom of expression and they need the opportunity to believe and not be hamstrung by, you know, what happens if it goes wrong moments. It's so impressive.
Yeah, Per definitely feels those characteristics. I think that Per is a visionary, and the what happens in those moments is he's got some good experience that allows him to continue to push through and cut through the noise.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of this, you know, you've spoken, Per, about the importance of what you do. Kind of obviously you have these fan bases, like you've got the Kiss Army and, you know, ABBA is ABBA and they have this iconic fan base, but so much of this is about bringing these artists and these brands to new audiences,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So when you're talking about, you know, a brand like Kiss, for example, or a brand like, you know, Tina Turner, who are these iconic acts, how do you approach that in terms of thinking about how you can take that to different audiences and the newer generation?
No, but again, we first of all, you know, as I said, we do different kind of due diligence and brand and the narrative. What story can we tell around them? But then we also use data, you know, and with streaming today, I'm talking not only for Spotify, I'm talking everything. You have open APIs that you can draw numbers from. You can see this I mean, if you just go through Spotify, you really can understand, you know, how many people complete the song. You know, I mean, it's all data. If you add a song to your own playlist, if you have the New Music Friday or whatever you have, and you have a song that someone sent to you, you add it to your own playlist. That's a big tick for the algorithms. That's really saying that this is a good song. If you complete the song, meaning if you listen to the end of the song, that's second best. If you share a song, that's in par with being second best. And then of course you have something that skips before 30 seconds has gone. You know, that's different. Then the song is not. First of all, it's not. You're not going to tick in for numbers or for taking part of the royalty pool, but it also shows that you're not interested in the song. 33%, approximately 30% of all songs started on Spotify being skipped within 5 seconds. Think about that.
Oh, interesting.
It's an interesting data point. And if you combine all the data you have, you know, and which generation, which age listen to, of course, it could mom and dad that have you have your credit card, so you can, you know, see that. And I think it's so much easier for us to make a good decision and make a decision that we know this is what it's worth. And there are institutes and companies in US that actually do valuation now on catalogs. And it's also companies, or, you know, private equity companies and banks that really look into this market and see that we have built a music as an asset class. And that's actually, you can when we buy big investments, we could actually loan a big part of it if we wanted, you know, as leverage. Because the banks just said, no, your catalog is good as a security. That's quite interesting where music has become. And that's not something, and that's, so that's really talking Moneyball here, you know, it's a different ball game.
Yeah, it's being able to kind of tap into those new audiences using the data that you have available, which you didn't have before,
No.
which is really crucial.
That was me doing. I mean, if you have a hunch, bet the bunch. That was more like. And I was saying to people that, you know, in the record industry is being private venture capitalist and entertainment. That's what we were, you know, going back. Just didn't really have a clue. We just had a feeling, or when we signed an artist and spent the millions of dollars in building videos, you know, recording acts, and you know, and then 2 out of 10, or depending on how good you are, 2 out of 5 maybe, if you're really good, was successes that actually finance everything else. Now we know what we're buying, we know the income streams, and we know it's going to grow with the markets because the market increasing. Then we have, then of course, if we do value add projects like a documentary or a biopic, or being lucky to have a song in Stranger Things season 4, like Kate Bush had, then you're becoming number 1 on the world Spotify chart 37 years after release. How about that as a value add?
And that's a classic example
Yeah.
of introducing that artist to a whole new audience.
Yeah.
Suddenly you have a bunch of 13, 14-year-olds walking around with Kate Bush t-shirts,
Yeah.
which
It's amazing.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And
And for the
exactly. And I feel like, if you invest in the brands that Pophouse does, then inevitably those moments are going to happen.
if you do that, if you do that, if you really try to find the gems, and then you're also able to be lucky. Or some a sports guy in Sweden is a downhill racer for ski. The report said you were very lucky today, and he answered back, lucky. The more I train, the more luck I have. And I think that's with data today. You find the right assets, and you will be able to be lucky.
Yeah, and I think there is the importance of gut feel, and there is still that understanding of what is in the cultural zeitgeist and how that's going to transcend different generations and different cultures around the world when you enter new markets and things like that. I don't think that will ever go away, but I think you're absolutely right. Just the amount of data that we get, we can ratify some of those gut feels and start to narrow the gap between kind of success and failure, and hopefully just make it a little bit more linear. It just super fascinating, and you guys are obviously right at the forefront of dealing with some of those iconic artists, and I think the same applies in spades, really, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So Per, we did want to touch on, I know we talked about this a little bit offline, but anyone that has watched the playlist on Netflix, and it is recommended watching from us, because it's great and a great story. But we know that you were very kind of instrumental in driving the streaming model, and very supportive of Spotify during its inception, which is great. And I think that kind of lends itself very well to how you look at things at Pophouse, and just this very innovative approach that you have. But where do you see that next wave of growth coming from? We know that streaming, for example, is slowing in the maturing market. So what do you see? What excites you now? Like having, that was 20 years ago when you were involved in the inception of Spotify. Where do you see the direction of travel now, and the next wave of growth coming from?
I believe that, if you talk about the total music industry, I would say that it's still growing. And, China is closed. They don't have Netflix. They don't have Spotify. But they're enormous population, and they growing very fast in their own Spotify competitors, doubling, I think from 150 to 300 million during this year, paying subscribers. And we also see Africa, if we talk about geographies, that is slowly growing, but we believe that it's going to be, it's going to grow. It's going to be a very interesting continent. Latin, we see, is just the fastest growing as of today.
Yeah.
And then everyone talks about it right now about AI, and that's going to be the next growth model. I'm not sure it will be that impactful for a listener for streaming. If there's 75,000, Deezer came out saying 75,000 something songs every day is AI songs that is uploaded into Deezer, which is just terrible. It's going to be forgetify, because in 10 years, no one going to remember. Maybe one song is going to come out and it happens. I think that we should look at AI as a fantastic tool for creators. That's really what this is. As I talked about Avicii, he couldn't play an instrument. He was a World of Warcraft player, a very good one. His friends was looking at him instead of playing with him. They're looking when he was crushing it. And But he just saw a documentary about a guy called Bass Hunter who did a song called Boot and Anna, and he showed in this documentary how he worked with the Fruit FL Studio, Fruit Loops. And so he downloaded and he started play with it. And then he loved it and he realized that I can do songs. And then after 2-3 years, he realized I really can do songs. And then, we, with his manager, I met them and we said, let's go, and then we released the first, the first real song was Seek Bromance. And then he was just on a roll. And so for him, because he couldn't play an instrument, and suddenly he could play all instruments. And he could create music and becoming this kind of, he was a genius, that was unleashed. In his brain, in his body, in his soul, he had all these songs and tunes and ideas. And thanks to, if that is not AI, I don't know what AI is. That you can do this with a tool like a synthesizer. You can play all instruments. You can play piano, and I think that is what's going to unleash new generation of creators, going to do music that we've never seen before. There is a saying from Pablo Picasso that art is not to depict reality. Art is to create something that no one's seen before. The same thing goes with creating music with AI tools. You have to do something that no one else has done before. Like Billie Eilish and her brother David created music for her. Rosalia right now, I think, is also amazing. Sound differently. So I really, think that's amazing. And I it's going to be fantastic to see in 10 years' time what kind of music songwriters. I'm talking about songwriters, artists, not AI monster. They're going to create thanks to AI tools that's being created and in the next few years.
Yeah, it's so interesting that, isn't it? And I think there's obviously two camps in the whole AI sphere as to whether it will be automatically generating music that people will consume. But if you're thinking of it from the flip side, just the democratization of creativity. Historically, in order to make music, you needed to play an instrument or to be able to sing, and they're quite physical restrictions if you don't know any of those things. And then the advent of more technology allows you to kind of move that further and get it to more people. And now really it's down to, okay, well, can you understand what good music actually sounds like?
Mm.
And if you've got the tools to be able to create that, well, then why not? I think the jury's still out as to whether machines should be creating fully fledged music or not. But ultimately, if people consume it, I suppose they do.
Yeah.
Natalia, you have raised a really significant amount of money now, over €1 billion for Pophouse's fund. How do you get institutional investors comfortable with backing your approach? And just to kind of continue that on, does it differ between when you're raising money for the fund and when you're raising money for the operational sides of the investment in ABBA Voyage and things like that?
So raising our first fund, especially at the time we did, was really about education and trust. So many institutional investors, they were still not that well acquainted with music as an asset class. Everybody understands music culturally, of course, but not necessarily how music rights are scalable and how we turn them into something that is accessible for the institutional investors. So we really spend a lot of time explaining everything that Per has been talking about, the growth, the underlying growth of the streaming market, the durability of the cash flows, the global nature of streaming and the growth, and just explaining the underwriting and the governance around how we do music investments, and make sure that people understood that this was really private equity standards. So a lot of education, a lot of listening to people's concerns to make sure that we could address them. And I think that
what were some of those biggest concerns? Like, in every, ultimately it's a sales pitch, isn't it? You're having to sell them the vision, explain them the details, give them the
Yes.
trust, but you're going to have to do some objection handling there. And what were the biggest challenges that you had to overcome?
A lot of people were asking us about AI. And, as
Okay,
Per
interesting.
mentioned, AI for us is a tool, and we use it as a tool. And as long as we own the IP, then we feel very confident, especially the kind of music that we focus on, the iconic artists and the catalog artists, where there is data and data time and time again shows that people like to listen to older music. Even younger generations like to listen to older music. So a lot of questions around AI and the impact of AI, a lot of questions around understanding the infrastructure of music. How do we collect music? What kind of risk do we really have? Who is paying? Who is collecting? So there was a lot of questions around this. We also had to spend a lot of time explaining to people how we do the value add and how we have this active approach, which is different to any approach that had been really focused on before. So, everything we've been talking about during this conversation, how we put the artist at the center. We believe in long-term value creation. We believe in bringing the music to new audiences through different creative experiences, some of them immersive, but some of them as well time tested as a good documentary or a good movie. So we have to speak about how sustainable alpha creation is in what we call entertainment and IP. And then a lot of people were asking about, well, we don't really know where to put you. We don't know if we have an
Yeah,
allocation.
yeah.
And actually the response was actually very, very easy. Like, if you have a private equity allocation, then you already have a place for music IP in your portfolio, because we try, govern, and manage the assets with the same discipline as any PE investment. But of course, we can also be placed in an uncorrelated bucket or an opportunistic bucket, or you'd be surprised when what we found out is that when people really want to invest with us, they find a place to put in.
Yeah.
Some people will categorize us as infrastructure, digital infrastructure, or even a sustainable investment because we're responsible investors. So, yeah.
Yeah. And do you find that some of those more tangible things that you guys have that maybe some other funds don't help with that? Because owning music, and particularly with the kind of complexities of the royalty flows and everything else, is not necessarily the most straightforward thing to explain. And in some cases, you can go and listen to the song, but given you have these like really tangible assets, do you
Mm.
find that helps with the conversation, at least from kind of an emotional and cultural side?
Yes, I always say that, for investors to come alongside and invest with you, you need to win both their hearts and their minds. So the minds, we win them by the discipline and the rigorous way we have to invest. And, we have Connie Johnson backing us for that. And someone that is very credible in the industry and people follow.
Certainly helps.
And
Yeah.
then certainly helps. And then the hearts, it's the creativity, it's the making people dream, is the fun part, it's the storytelling, and that it's embedded by Bjorn. And then obviously the teams that are working alongside Bjorn in the creative and alongside Connie in everything that is investment. But it's the tangible part helps people experiencing what we try to convey in words by seeing how people react to a digital version of a singer or a band, and people literally just connecting completely emotionally with the
Yeah.
experience and with the others. So people get excited, and
I can see that.
it's it's always easier when you have a proposal that it's financially solid, because we're here to talk about financial opportunity, but it's also fun and it's meaningful. More and more people want to be part of stories that matter, and we offer that. We offer being part of creating new formats of entertainment and really making the lives and the legacies of some of the artists to live forever.
Yeah. And invariably these are like long-term commitments, aren't they, from all parties really? So getting people excited and engaged with the story and the journey is as important as anything else. Obviously, the hygiene factors do have to add up. You do have to be able to give the narrative and around the financials and make sure that that's squared away. But people do engage with things culturally and emotionally. I think that's hugely important. And I think it comes across so well in a lot of the things that you do. And I mean, for me, for sure, all of the nil rights that you own just help tell that story so well. It's so nice to see some of these artists come back to life in a way that you would never have expected. I think that's so true with obviously ABBA, but also for me specifically, some of the stuff that I've seen around Kiss is just absolutely, it's so brilliant.
One thing, as Natalia was saying, we don't top down. We have the creativity, we have the financial, people, and that's make us unique. And we don't go in with 3-piece suit and a PowerPoint and do a presentation to artists or to estates we try to be ourselves, because artists of today, they also think about their legacy. And the key thing about that is, one thing is that, of course, they want money, but they also want their legacies to be handled. And it's all about trust. You talk about trust with the investors, Natalia. We also talk about trust when it comes to why should Gene and Paul put their life work into the hands of a Swedish company.
Yeah.
And that's really of course you need to build that trust, and that's very important. It's also, for example, with Avicii, we don't have to buy everything. In that case, they want to be part of the journey, because they said, what you're going to do together with us looks so interesting, so we want to be part of it. So they still own 25% of the catalog, which we think is fantastic. Then we're on a journey together. And that's really what makes us, again, differently in this environment. We are not only flexible, we also, really needs to build the trust, so they know that we're in here and we're going to take care of this, and we're going to do a job not only for your past, but also for your future.
Yeah. And I think that partnership and trust is so key, because it's very, very seldom that somebody owns 100% of all of the rights to everything. So every engagement, every piece of effort is a commitment on behalf of multiple parties. And if you have warring factions within that, it's just not going to work very well, is it? So, your narrative, your kind of support, your experience, I think, Per specifically, your industry background and the whole story with streaming is just so fascinating. And who else better than to kind of champion anybody who's invested their career in making art and making sure that that's commercially successful to the future. Like, incredible stuff, really incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that Kiss talked about, being forever young and forever iconic through what you're doing with their Avatar show. But, that also is they're placing trust, right? Because that is forever, potentially. Like, they don't know how long that's going to continue. So, they're trusting in that you are going to continue their legacy for potentially decades to come. So,
Well, for those people who've bought a coffin, until eternity, effectively.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so I think we will move on to the quick fire round. And Natalia, I will start with you. Is there a particular song or album that you have on repeat at the moment?
Yeah, it's an easy one. I've always been a fan, and ever since we acquired the catalog, I can't stop listening to Simply the Best from Tina Turner.
Amazing.
Have it on repeat.
Classic. And Per, moving it over to you, is there something that you can't stop listening to at the moment?
I would say this week is actually the I don't call it an anniversary, but it's 8 years on Tuesday, 2 days ago, that Tim decided, aka Avicii, decided to end his life. So in honoring of that, I've been listening to, not honoring, it's always a joy to listening to his music. And so that's, and I can't say a special song. It's more like, maybe Without You. And that's really what's been on my iPhone this week.
Yeah, that's really, really meaningful. And Natalia, going back to you, in your opinion, is there a particular opportunity at the moment in music rights investing that is particularly underrated, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a bit of a hype, but at the same time, it's underrated what AI is going to do. to the way we can improve, build the catalogs. And it goes from the infrastructure, which you guys are experts on, but also the creative storytelling, the digital experiences. So I really feel like you know, a lot of hype around it, but still a little bit underrated. That
Yeah, a lot
the
of
tremendous
opportunity.
potential of AI. Yeah, all the
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean,
services
even if
around
you
it.
just look at outside of the direct musical side, but the production of the avatars and everything
Yeah.
else, all of
Mm,
Yeah.
the opportunity around kind of keeping people ever young for better or for worse is
yeah.
fascinating.
Terrifying and
even
amazing.
even able to interact in real time. You know.
Mm.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just the Unreal Engine from Epic Games, it's helping, rendering in real time, taking down the cost. So it's very interesting how AI we haven't seen nothing yet what they're gonna make to the society of human beings.
Yeah. And Per, on that note, is there something related or otherwise that you think is particularly underrated in the music rights investment space?
I wouldn't tell you what I think is underrated because
You're gonna keep your for yourself.
no, I just thought of a I mean I think if you look at the alpha and the Z generation and alpha generation, look at how they define themselves today and how I defined myself when I was young. I define myself and my peers would design ourselves through the music we listen to. And if you came home to one of these peers or to a girl, you check the library of CDs or vinyl, and then you know exactly who this person was. That's not the case today because everyone is unfaithful to everyone listens to everything, And so I'm not as unfaithful with not having a fan relation to an artist. So what happens instead is that the new generation, they define themselves on where they are and what they do, and then they document that through their phones and they share it through social media, meaning that they going to live concerts across the world. Celine Dion, 9 million people wanted to buy tickets to her concerts. Harry Styles, is doing, I don't know, Wembley Stadium, now doing, so 6 concerts I think he's doing in Wembley Stadium, and he's doing a Europe tour in 3 cities, Harry Styles, I think it is, but he's doing multiple performances. Adele did, 10 80,000 seaters in Munich only because she didn't want to tour in Europe. But people went there from all of Europe, including myself, because I wanted to experience her, see her live performance in her show. And that is, that it cost a lot of money, but that's what people want to spend money on. So I think that's we're going to see more of. It's the new generation coming up. They don't care really what kind of brands clothes they have on, but when it comes to what they're doing, they can spend a fortune, or they go to their parents and say, "I want to do that because I really want to expose myself into new experiences," and that's really what I believe is the future for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Amazing. And last question for you both, Natalia, I'll start with you. If you could own one song, what would it be and why?
It's gotta be a song that I used to listen to when I was a little girl, and my father would sing to me. So it has a very emotional and personal relevance for me, and it's obviously Dancing Queen.
Of course, I want to own that too.
Amazing.
Yeah. But it has. I said it has an emotional connection. It's not just because it's a great song and it's a very financially successful song. It really brings a lot of beautiful
I
memories.
love that. And talk about manifesting. I mean, you had no idea when you were a little girl that you would end up in this position today. So that's incredible.
And I have Per to thank for that.
Yeah, and Per, what about you? If you could own one song?
I like fantastic songs, as you said, like creating emotions inside yourself. And it's also, it's like you can listen to them over and over. And I think that Die With A Smile with Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga is a fantastic song. And me being a romantic, I know, people will laugh if I said that. I'm not.
You are a romantic.
I would say that, that is song I think is amazing. And I think both those artists are doing fantastic vocal performances. And again, it's Bruno Mars, which I just fall in love with when it comes to, when it comes to songwriting as an artist. And Lady Gaga is also, a true creative person in herself. So that, and I also Die With A Smile is really part of my, my thinking, because there's a book that I just read called, Die With Zero, which is that you shouldn't be the richest person at this cemetery. I mean, you shouldn't have children hope dad dies soon so we get his money. He's just, spend the money on yourself, on your kids, on your peers, on your friends, and die with a smile, with zero. That's a perfect ending.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and in a kiss coffin.
It's a
And
kiss
so, like,
coffin with
it's
a
to wrap up too.
with a smile on the front.
Exactly. Then I would have a smile. Yes.
With the painted
Exactly.
name, image,
Painted
and likeness
smile.
rights
Yeah.
of kiss makeup.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, I feel like that's the perfect place to wrap this up. So thank you so much, Per and Natalia, for being amazing guests. We've loved speaking to you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you guys. That's been a lot
Been
of
a
fun.
pleasure.
Yes.
And as always, thank you everyone for tuning in. And please feel free to like and subscribe because that really helps us to bring you more great content. And we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Music Moneyball. If you enjoyed the conversation, you can subscribe at standard-innovation.com to get every episode in your inbox. You can also follow the show on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube to stay ahead of the curve in music rights investment.